Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in and watching my channel. In this video, we are going to learn how to make a map of New York City recycling locations. I'm very excited about this video because we're going to use Dash to do an interactive map that connects between the markers on the map and the checklist. So the borough and what the user is going to be looking to recycle. Compost, electronics. So if I, for example, unclick Bronx, you'll see that the markers here were unclicked. If I unclick compost, you'll see that all the pink ones, the compost locations, are unclicked. So we're going to learn how to do this. We're going to learn how to have a hover and text over it, how to select a button, and then how to see a link come up that is clickable and that can give the user more information. Before we start, make sure to open the description below the video and open all the links on it. I would recommend you open the links before you continue with this video because it will help you follow along and understand all the documentation and why we do what we're doing. Also, below the links, you'll also see a video layout. So if you want to, after watching the whole video or before, if you want to jump to certain locations of the video, skip certain locations, see certain parts, then you'll have several links there that you can use to do exactly that. I'm going to assume that you have basic knowledge of Dash. If you don't, you can jump into my introduction playlist where you can see how to make a pie chart and how to make a bar chart using Dash by Plotly. But if you have any questions or you need some clarity, feel free to use the comments below to ask me exactly that or to tell me what you need, and I'll make sure to get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, so let's go into the data before we go into the code. So this is an Excel sheet that I'm using, and it's in the link below that you've hopefully opened, and you'll see several columns here. These are the columns that we're going to use throughout the code, throughout the tutorial. This Excel sheet was built by me based off of 5 or 6 different Excel sheets on NYC Open Data. So these Excel sheets have all the locations of compost, a different recycling of electronics, of hazardous material. So I put everything together in this one Excel sheet and added a column scheme of color, scheme, and I also added this hover text, so it'll make it easier to plot this information later on. So feel free to use this Excel sheet, download it, and play around with it. Okay, so let's jump right into the code. This section up here is you're not going to see it on the code that you're going to download because this is just for me, so I can use a Mapbox access token, and I put that token in a different file, so it's not visible here because it's obviously private information that I can't have everybody using. What you'll do, instead of using all of this, you'll just use this section. So you're just going to add your own Mapbox token here into this code. Okay, then you want to obviously download all the pertaining all the libraries. Make sure to use Plotly. Well, this is the version I'm using, 4.4.1, so feel free to use that one, and Dash version 1.0.0. Okay, so here we're reading the CSV or the Excel sheet into Pandas Dataframe. We're starting the app here. And then I put here black bold. This is just a styling that I'm going to use throughout, so I don't have to repeat all of this. I just created the variable. I'm not going to go into the styling or into the CSS document that I'm using, so we're just going to go into the nuts and bolts of the checklist and the map, the markers, and how we're connecting everything together with the link. Okay, so let's jump into the layout. In the layout, there are several sections. As you saw on the map, we have the legend. It's not clickable. I'm creating my own HTML legend. The borrow checklist, the recycling checklist, the link below, and then we're going to create in the map. So it's going to all go in the layout. This is the legend, so I'm just adding HTML lists of compost, electronics, hazardous waste, giving them some color, which leads us to this. This is the section that is creating. If you want to learn more about how HTML works or what this means, the LI or the UL, I added the documentation also in the description, the -HTML components, and you can see each and every one of this if you want to go and just open it and get a better description of what each and every one means and how to use it. Okay, so after the legend, we have the borrow checklist right here, and I'm going to give this ID, I'm going to give it a borrow name so I can remember which checklist this refers to. And the options are going to be all the 5 boroughs within that Excel sheet, or at least within the borough column within the Excel sheet. So here I'm saying, give me the unique values of the Dataframe boroughs. So it's only going to be the 5 boroughs because NYC only has 5 boroughs, and sort them alphabetically. And for all these 5, insert them into this dictionary of labels and values. So in essence, this is our options parameter within the checklist. And then the value, meaning the value that I want the page to, or the checklist to have checked as soon as a page loads, is the same thing. I'm sorting all the unique boroughs and adding them in here as a label and as a value. So in essence, I'm saying that as soon as the page loads, I want all 5 boroughs to be checked. So this leads us to this. You'll see if I refresh this, all 5 boroughs are checked: Staten Island, Queens, and Manhattan. So it's because of this part that they're all checked. If I only wanted Manhattan to be checked, I would just put Manhattan, and that's it. The second checklist, we're going to follow a similar process. I'm going to call this ID recycling type ID. This is going to be the ID of this checklist, and I'm going to sort all the unique types, recycling types. So if you remember, this type column in the database refers to compost or public recycling bins or electronics. I think there's 5 or 6 types. So I'm just saying, take the unique types, take only those 5 and 6 of them, not the 900 rows, sort them alphabetically, and then put them as options. I'm doing the same thing for values. So all 5 of them, just like in the boroughs, all 5 of them are checked when the page loads. Then I want to add a web link. So here I'm not adding the actual link itself. I'm just adding an HTML element, the PRE element, with an ID web link and empty list of children. And here in the empty list, in the children, is where the link itself is actually going to go in. I could put in a link right now and that will show up, but I don't want one link. There's 900 or 800 different links, and I want them to go in there based on what the user chooses. So that I'm going to do below, and that's why this is empty right here. Styling it, this class name, well, usually when you see class name, it has to do with styles and the CSS document, so I'm really not going to go into it right now. I'll have a separate video to explain styling and CSS documents. The last section of the map is going to be on the right, the map. We're going to use DCC graph to create a map figure. And again, here I'm only going to give it the ID graph. There is no map. There is nothing in there yet. I'm going to create that based on the user selections of the checklist below. But I'm going to make sure, knowing that there's going to be a map in here, I want to configure it. So I'm going to say display mode bar false means that on the top right, usually if this is true, which I think is default, you have the Plotly camera that you can use, or PDF document, save document that you can use. You can use lasso and select box and all those kind of things. I don't want to see that, so I just put that on false. But feel free to change that to true and see what happens, so you'll see what I'm talking about. Scroll zoom. Again, I don't remember what the default is, but I put this on true because I want to be able to zoom in in and out of the map, which I wouldn't be able to do if I put false. Okay, so remember, there's no map in here yet, but we'll put that in a minute. Okay, so I'm closing my last div here, the whole layout, and now I'm going to go into the callback. So the callback is really where the magic happens. This, I always say this, I should probably change my words, but I really am excited about this callback decorator because this is where we actually are connecting between the user information or the information that the user is playing with on the web page and creating the figure out of it. So we're going to use two inputs because I'm going to refer to the two checklists that we have on this interactive web app. I'm going to refer to the borrow name checklist, and I'm going to refer to the recycling type. And I'm going to say if the user chooses, whatever value the user chooses in these two checklists is actually going to be used to create a certain figure. And that figure is going to be a map. That figure is what we're going to return in the function below. Okay, so let's go into the function. After every callback, as you know by now, there has to be a function. This function we're going to call update figure. You can call it whatever you want. And the two arguments, remember obviously we need two arguments because we have two inputs. The first one is going to refer to the first input, and the second one always refers to the second input. So again, you can call this whatever you want. I'm calling this chosen borrow and chosen recycling just so I can remember what input I'm referring to. Okay, and this is probably one of the most important sections right here. This is where I'm filtering, making a copy and filtering the data frame based on what the user wants. So how am I doing this? I know that the chosen borrow, which is actually the value of the borrow name checklist, is a list, is a form of a list. And how do I know that? It's a list and not a string or a number or an integer, because when I go into the checklist and I look at all the checklist properties, I see that all the way in the bottom, the checklist value is a list of strings. So it's very important to know the type of the value that you're asking the user to enter or to choose. So if I know the value is going to be a string, I'm going to say, and we know it's a string of boroughs because we only have 5 options, the Manhattan, Bronx, and the other 3. I'm saying in this line right here that I want the data frame to be filtered, or at least, data frame to be filtered according to the boroughs that are in this list. So if the user chooses a list of Manhattan and Bronx boroughs alone and doesn't want to see the other boroughs, then those are the only rows I'm going to get. All the rows that have a Manhattan and Bronx borough in that column. And I want from those rows, let's say you're down to 500 rows instead of 900. And from those 500, I want a list of all the recycling types that the user has chosen. So if the user wants, I'll go back here, let's go back here. If the user wants only to see compost and electronics as opposed to all these 3, so they only want to see compost and electronics, it's a list of 2 strings, compost and electronics, which are referring to the columns, and this is what it's saying here. They give me a data frame only where the type is equal to, meaning the recycling type is equal to compost and electronics. So all the other rows will not be chosen. So altogether, we get a data frame, or at least a copy of this data frame. You never want to play with a data frame inside here. You always want to make a copy of the boroughs and the recycling types that the user chose. All right, so here's the variable that I have that has all the data frame it has the data frame with the data that I need because that's what the user chose. And now we're going to plug this data into a ScatterMapBox. Okay, so the ScatterMapBox section. Let me see here. this is another link that I added below the video. Make sure to open it. Here is, you'll get the references for all the different figures you can make in Plotly. I clicked on ScatterMapBox. It took me here, and here you see all the different parameters that you can put in a ScatterMapBox, at least in the data section. And ScatterMapBox has a data section, and it has a layout section. It's a dictionary of data and layout keys. So this is going to be my data keys, which is going to represent all the markers. And we'll go over all the parameters in those locations in the code, but there's a lot more. So read, and you can see what each one of them means. You can do show legend. In this case, I'm not using that. You can look at opacity or the mode, IDs, lat long, which represent the location on a map, text. So feel free to pause as we're going over these parameters and read them. If I'm going to explain about mode, pause, read about the mode, and then see what it means, unselected, and so on and so on. But I'm going to give you a brief explanation here, obviously. That's why we're doing this video. So the first parameter I'm going to use is the lon, which represent the longitude. So I'm just saying from this data frame that we filtered from the user options. In the lon parameter, I'm going to put the longitude column. In the latitude parameter, I'm going to put the latitude column. In the mode, I'm going to call it, there's only a few options, markers or line. I'm going to use markers because I want like little small markers, little scatter dots. And then I'm going to give it a little bit of, I'm going to play around with its style. So I'm going to give it, the color of the marker is going to be based off of the color column. And remember, the color column I already played around with in the Excel sheet. It's right here. So each recycling type has a color scheme. This one is, I think, pink. This one, I think, is black. So I'm just going to take that and put this column in here into the color of the marker. And then I'm going to say an unselected marker is going to have the opacity of 1. It's going to be pretty dark. And if you select a marker, it's going to have an opacity of 0.5. So it's not going to be as dark, and it's going to be a little bit bigger. It's going to be a size of 25. I think the default size is 10, so this size is going to be 25 if it's selected. Hover info is going to be text because there are several options. Again, read the documentations if you like to learn more about it. But if you choose, I think by default you get latitude and longitude information on the hover. But if you don't want that, if you just want your own text or a certain text, then put this in there. And then we're going to go into the hover text because I want to tell the map or the code what kind of text to show. And I'm going to show the hover text. And the hover text column from the Excel sheet is, again, a column that I already created and play around with, and it's right here, the hover text column. See? So every column or every row has a different text that I created from the Excel sheet. So this is the text we're going to see in there. And then this custom data. Custom data is you're actually telling the map that if a certain marker is selected, to remember a certain datum. Remember, in this case, the website column. It's not going to do it automatically. So if I want the ScatterMapBox data section to remember the websites of each marker that we click on, this is what it's going to do it. This is how it's going to do it. And then we're going to connect, you'll see later, we're going to connect between what the Dash app remembers and the link that we want to show in the very bottom. All right, so now we're returning. Remember, whatever we're returning is actually the output of the callback. So if the output of the callback was a figure, so here we're returning a figure, and then a figure in a graph is a dictionary, especially if it's a map, ScatterMapBox, it's a dictionary of data key and location values, a list, and the layout key, and then the other values of the layout. Okay, so we have the data, which is the locations right here that we created, and now we're going to go into the layout. The layout has different functions. I will go to follow along. You can pause the video whenever you want and just go right here to the left to the layout section. And you'll see many different things in the layout, different parameters that you can read over, many of which, or some of which, I'm going to use here below. Your vision, a very, very important parameter, is something I call this foo. You can call it really whatever you want, as long as it's not, another word that you're copying from a different part of the code. And it helps preserve the state of the map after a callback activated. If this did not exist, and I activated callback, I said just show me recycling of compost only in Manhattan and not in the other boroughs, the map would restart and kind of like zoom out and go back to its original state. And I don't want that. I don't want the map to go back to its original state every time the callback is clicked. So I use this line of code below. Click mode. Click mode is connected to the custom data up here. So click mode, well, eventually they'll be connected. Now they're not. You're just saying that once I click on a marker on a certain recycling type dot in the map, I want the dash web app to remember that was to activate a plotly click event. In essence, remember that thing was clicked and see all the data that's in there in that marker, and actually consider it selected. So if it's considered selected, then you can see that we asked it to have an opacity of 0.5 and size 25. This wouldn't happen, this part, if you don't have select here. So that's why I added plus select. There are only 3 or 4 options of you can do in the click mode. So you can look in the documentation and see what options you have. But event is very important here in order to connect the website, the link of each recycling component to the page below. Hover mode. Hover mode I'm going to do closest. This is usually what you want to do when you have a click mode of event select. Hover distance is 2. So if 2, it just tells you how far away from the marker you want the hover to appear. So 2 means this. If I did 10 or 50, that text will show up if I was with my mouse here, or my mouse 50 or 100, or here as further away. Now I did 2, so I really have to get closer for the text to show up. Then I'm adding my own title to the map, and then I have to give the Mapbox, or at least define the parameters within the Mapbox. For this, you have to add your access token, so make sure to create your own Mapbox access token and put this in here, or just pull it from the top. Bearing refers to the angle you're going to see the map. Are you going to see from the east, or from the west, or from the north? I think the higher the bearing, it goes counterclockwise. Style of the Mapbox token is going to be light. There's several styles you can read in documentation. You can have it dark, you can have it professional, different styles, and they're very cool. But I really like light, so I'm going to put that, a light style of the map. Center means where do I want the map to be centered when I load the page. And I think I put this around somewhere in northern Manhattan, so that's why as soon as you load the page, or once you load the page, the first thing you're going to see is kind of like Manhattan in front of you, and not Staten Island or Pennsylvania. You're going to see this lat long, which I just pulled from Google Maps. The pitch is how, play around with this, but it's how far north or how far you see on the map. So the higher the pitch, the more you can see up north, the more the map looks stretched. But probably I'm not giving the best explanation, so just play around with this number and see what visualization you like the most. And zoom is how when the page loads, how zoomed in or zoomed out, you want the map to appear. So if I hit the higher the zoom, I think the closer I am, and the lower, the further away I'm from in this case, New York City. Okay, so I'm closing the dictionary, closing the return part of the function, and now it's returning a map with locations, data, and a layout. Okay, so this is the last section, and here is a callback. We're going to create a callback for a web link. So this is what's going to allow us, right here, all this is what's going to allow us to click on something and have a link show up here on the left side. So how do I do that? First, I need the callback. I need to call, I'm going to use right now as an input, I'm going to use the input, the click data value of the graph component, because the graph component, if you go to dcc.graph components or dash graph components, you'll see that it has different properties to it. One of the properties is click data, and click data is the data that the map remembers after you click on a marker, and that holds on to it. So I'm going to use that data that the app remembers, and I'm going to use that data to access my link, because one of the things that the app remembered was the link. Remember, click data here, the custom data is the link. So I want the link. There's a lot of information in there, but I'm going to access the link within the click data, and I'm going to feed it into the children of the web link. Web link, if you remember, was just the HTML element right here, web link, and with an empty children. So in here, based on every marker that's clicked, I'm going to put the HTTP link. Okay. So here's the function. I called this function display click data, and it's going to use the first and only argument is going to be the click data. I called it the same. You can call it whatever you want. And the first thing you want to make sure to put is if click data is none, because it's always going to be none in the beginning. When you first load the page, the callback is automatically activated. And since when you first load the page, you're not clicking on anything yet, the click data is going to be none. So you want to make sure that you don't want an error to arise. So make sure to say this: if click data is none, return click on any bubble. So that is a string I'm going to return within that web link children's section of that HTML element. I'm going to return a string of click on any bubble. However, else, like if click data is anything else than none, if there's a value there, I am going to extract the link from it. Okay? And this is how I extract the link. And this is, it took me hours to understand how to write this simple line of code. And what's really helped me understand how to write this or how to access the link is through this part. So I'm saying if there is a click data, if there's some kind of value in there, let's extract the link. But where is it? That was a problem that I couldn't solve. So if I'm saving this, I'm going to do this again. You'll see that now I'm going to ask it to print the click data, just so I can see down here, what is the click data all about? Let's wait for it to load. Let's click on the data so it's actually activated. Any marker that will activate the click data. Do this. Okay, clicked on it. Great. So here's a click data. It's right here. It starts from here and it goes all the way here. So click data, don't ask me why, but it's a dictionary of key points and value and a list of values. So that's exactly why I'm actually writing this code like this. I'm saying go into the value of this points key, go into the first section of the list because the list has a dictionary. So I'm going to go into the dictionary, and within this dictionary, go into the custom data. So within this dictionary here, which is the first element of the list, I'm going to go into the custom data key, an extracted value, which is in this case HTTP www, which is the link. So using this, I actually found the link. And now I saved it under the link variable. Close this. And I'm adding this code because not all recycling types have a link. Some of them are just like recycling bins out in the street. So they're not going to have any links attached to them. So if link is none, I have to return something so I don't get an error. And it's going to return just a string of no website available. If there is actually a link there is something in the custom data, I'm going to return an HTML link. A clickable link. It's going to allow me to click on it, and this is how I'm going to do it. And we're using the link from here. I'm also going to do target blank. This is very important to add because what it's saying is that if I click on the link in the map that was generated, it's going to open a new tab. It's not going to open this link instead of the map in the same tab, but it's going to open a new tab with that link below. Okay, and that's it. And that's how you finish, you execute your app, and there you have it. So let's take 10 seconds to look at the end result. Okay, so the end result is this, where I can click on a Bronx. If I don't want to see the Bronx, if I just want to see, for example, in Brooklyn, or maybe in Staten Island, I want to see recycling types, and now I have it only in Brooklyn and Staten Island. Now let's say I just want to see electronics and compost and public recycling bins, so now I'm only seeing those. Or maybe I don't care about electronics, I'll take the blues out, and I'm only seeing pink and brown, which you can see here is compost and recycling bin. And if I click on it, this doesn't have a website, as you can see on the bottom left of the map. This is a public recycling bin, but this does. You go to the left, you click on the website, and it opens a link. Neat. So I really like these kind of things. So I hope you were able to learn a thing or two from this tutorial. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe below and turn on the notification bell on the upper right, because you'll be informed every week of the new video that I upload into YouTube, so you can learn new things about Dash by Plotly, how to make cool graphs, and how to make cool data visualization apps. If you want to learn more about Dash by Plotly, there's also a cool forum. You can go into the Dash by Plotly forum, which is the link in the description below, and you can learn more about all the different Dash and Plotly questions that people ask, and how people create different visualizations. And it's a really neat community, so I hope you join as well. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.